guys, I'm Vulture Culture. Tonight we're going to be shooting out basically the two best vintage hybrid synths you can buy, the Korg DW-8000 from 1985 and the Ensoniq SQ-80 from 1987. And these are two phenomenal hybrids. I would say the SQ-80 is the challenger. We haven't done a lot of shootouts with the SQ-80. It is a very deep synth. The Korg DW-8000, on the other hand, we've done a bunch of shootouts with, and I would refer to it as the reigning champion because every time we've put it up against another synth, it has dominated. People just love the sound of the synthesizer. The great thing about both of them is you can get these guys for about $650 right now off of Reverb with shipping. I'm not kidding. So our friend in the chat, Dubstation Zero, is selling one of these for about $650 with the with shipping and everything. And then I also saw one of these guys, the DW-8000, for $650. So the way tonight's going to go is we will do a comparison here, and we'll start with the oscillators, we'll compare the filter, and then we'll talk about what's similar and what's different between the two synths. So welcome to the stream. I'm going to go ahead and initialize both of these synthesizers. So I have a preset here, and I'm going to, on my retroactive programmer, I'm going to just hit scratch patch generator. And then what I'm actually going to do is just turn the glide off for some reason. And try to get these matched in terms of volume. So make sure. What's that sounds about right. So anyways, let's go ahead and check out the sawtooth wave, as of course that's everybody's favorite waveform, and it'll give us a good indication as well about what the overall timbre of these synths are, because of course they have digital oscillators, so that means as we go low we're going to get more aliasing, especially back in the day. Nowadays it's not really as much of a problem. Actually very similar. Don't you guys think? All right, I'm going to go, usually I start at the bottom, but I think the bottom is going to be more interesting. Bottom's always more interesting, I think. So let's just compare the highest notes. No noticeable difference to me. Maybe a little brighter on the SQ-80. I am also hearing a very slight hum. That's just because of how many fucking LED lights I've got in here. I'm seeing a lot of people talk about the ESQ1 in the chat, and the thing is that right now Dubstation Zero's SQ80 is cheaper than any ESQ1 on Reverb right now. So you should definitely, if you're at all in the market, you should snag that synthesizer. Okay, so this is the first time I hear any noticeable, meaningful difference, right? Little bit of aliasing coming in, right? Do you guys hear that, or am I crazy? I'm getting a little more brightness from the DW-8000. Also, whenever I listen back to these parts of the videos, because I'm live streaming this as opposed to uploading a video to YouTube, there's more compression, so you can hear like a weird noise at the very high end frequencies, and that's just the nature of doing a live stream, but I apologize for that. Little difference, little bit of aliasing ring. The DW-8000 just sounds real right. It just sounds like an analog synth. I can hear aliasing again. I've got some sort of weird overtone from the SQ-80. Having said that, it is brighter sounding, so do with that what you will. So on this lowest note, you can definitely hear the aliasing on both of them. And I wouldn't say one strikes me as being more offensive than the other. What do you guys think? If I had to pick one, the thing about the SQ-80 is that Nyquist frequency that's ringing, that's aliasing, is a little bit higher pitched on the SQ-80 than it is on the DW. But they're pretty damn good. If anything, the DW feels like it might be a little fatter. Am I crazy, or is it more mid-rangey on the SQ-80? Dave, I didn't say hi to you earlier. How's it going, my friend? I agree with you, Parbs. I think the DW has more low mids and the SQ-80 has more high mids. Yeah, just so fat. But they both sound good. I don't think there's really a reason to not be into it. So then we can go to oscillator 1 and then wave, and we can step that through, and we can go to all the different waveforms we have. So we can go to a square wave, and same thing over here on synthesizer. We can check out the square waves on both. So again, this is just sort of to, come up with some sort of idea of what the starting point is. Of course, these are hybrid synths, so they're going to have all sorts of different waveforms. And we'll actually cover most of that later in the stream when we get to more of the differences. I just want to hear the kind of the raw tone of the synthesizer. So I don't know. Interesting sort of variance to the SQ-80, whereas I feel like the DW-8000 is just very consistent across the keypad. However, the raw tone of the low end of the SQ-80 just opened up compared to the DW-8000. It's like someone took the wet sock off the speaker. I don't know where I get these fucking metaphors. High end is virtually identical again, which is actually interesting to me because the way that these types of synths create square waves, it's not obvious that they would sound identical, right? But let's do again a little chord test. Dubstation, I agree. I love a good aliasing filter. Aliasing oscillator. For me, the Kwai K3 is the king there, where you just get that beautiful, crunchy, gnarly, nasty, scummy synth sound. So if I got some sickos in the chat. Also, there's some interesting little detune going on naturally in these synths. SQ-80 is just way more in your face in terms of the high end, but as far as having that sweet low end, I mean, I think that's kind of up for you guys to decide, but for me, I'm okay with saying, yeah, that's definitely a thing. Okay, so let's do one more. So I'm actually going to do one more oscillator. I wasn't going to. I was going to wait till later. But I think both of these synthesizers excel at bell sounds. So, of course, in 83 or so, the DX7 came out and blew everybody's minds with FM synthesis. And this kind of represents the mid-80s as that sort of era where the synth companies were trying to catch up and, you know, analog synths weren't seen as cool. So what these synths can do and why they're so valuable, I think, to the modern musician is they can do the analog thing. They can sound super vintage analog, and then they can also go into that DX7 territory, but they don't have that cheap, plasticky, tacky-ass DX7 sound. They sound really warm and fat and analog. So let's compare the Bell oscillators. There's going to be more Bell type sounds in the SQ-80, but these are the main ones. So let's just go ahead and check it out. I mean, almost immediately, actually, I would say the DW-8000 is starting to really open up as just having that consistent low end and being very just consistent across the key bed. I wonder how many times I can say consistent. Right? I would say the SQ-80 almost sounds a little Casio-like, doesn't it? Have kind of like a little bit of that, you know. I really noticed it in the low end. Beautiful sort of atonal sound down there. Who gives a fuck about the bells? That's awesome. I didn't know that was a Trent Reznor quote. Yeah. More resistance before hitting the filter. I actually don't know what that means, if I'm being completely honest. It's just like totally not holding up in the low end compared to the DW. So that's just something I wanted to cover real quick. That is not a make it or break it, but... Okay, now what we need to do is go to the filter and bring the filter down, right? And then we can modulate it with the wheel, and we'll modulate it. And we'll just bring this up so... Or let's do it like this. Then go over here and... trying to just tune that because I think we'll have a little bit more range actually using the thing here. Let me just turn my AC off again. Sorry, I thought I had that handled. So we're going to do some filter sweeps and just see what they sound like. So I'll be using the wheel on the SQ-80 because I don't know if you guys noticed that, but one thing about it that not everybody loves is that as you stroke the keys, moving that parameter value in between keystrokes, you don't hear anything. So you have to wait until the next keystroke to hear the difference. But you can use something like the wheel to modulate it. So that's a thing worth knowing about. So anyways, let's go ahead. And I think I can actually even double modulate it with the wheel, and maybe that'll give us more range. Let's see what happens if I do that. Oh yeah, so that's cool. That's a neat little trick I haven't done before. I don't know how well you can see it on the stream, but I've actually used the wheel double modulating, so I have a full filter sweep. So this will be very good to do a comparison. So why don't we hear the difference between a filter sweep on these two bad boys. So I'll start with the SQ-80. And I'm going to do my best not to speak in between because our little goldfish brains can't remember little sonic differences. So we're going to, I'm going to try to shut up between these takes. So immediately, the lowest of the low frequencies for me, I hope you're listening with good headphones or a subwoofer, you'll be hearing that the lowest of the low frequencies are just not ripping through with the SQ-80. Conversely though, there is like this nice push in the low mids. Let's see over here. Okay, so with no resonance, right? I think that's not really much of a comparison. The DW sounds great. It's also just got more low end from the oscillator, so it could just be that. Let's bring the resonance up to about 25% on both of these guys, just to see. So we'll start to integrate some of the character there. So again, we'll start with the SQ-80. And we have the NJM filter in the DW-8000, and we have a Curtis chip in the SQ-80, just for you synths nerds out there. Hey Seb, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. Oh, Vulture Mom, there is a goldfish emoji. That's amazing. So immediately a difference in the resonance scaling. We're getting a lot more resonance out of the SQ-80. And that filter is starting to talk, and it is starting to do things to my body. I mean, it sounds incredible. Let's bring the resonance up to 50% on both of them and see where we're at. Because up until this point, the DW-8000's had the best filter I've ever heard. I think that the NJM 2069 chip, I think is what it is. It's just incredible. However, that last little demo there, the Curtis chip and the SQ-80 was sounding really good. So I want to hear what you guys think though. So here I'm going to not speak a whole lot. I mean, it's not really comparable in terms of ballsiness. So at 50%, we've got a little bit more volume coming out of the SQ-80. I suppose I could pull that back a bit, but it's just pushing hard. And I did some tests before the stream with varying the oscillator DCA levels into the filter to see if that was like overdriving the filter too much. And it didn't appear to be the case. It seems that this is just how this filter sounds, which is with a lot of snarl. Paul, welcome to the stream. I meant to ask you, have you ever gotten your Vulture Culture shirt? I believe you ordered one, and there was some weird shit with Printify, but hopefully it's gotten to you at this point, right? You got one, right? If not, that's okay. Let's go up to 75% and see what we've got here. I don't know if everybody loves filter sweeps as much as I do. Holy shit. Yeah, that is ripping. I have to get you the a crop top. And I actually don't remember. I know on the DSS-1 you can disable everything to the joystick here so that we can control that. But right now, if I do that, it just pumps to the VCF, and I don't know if there's a way to disable that on the DW-8000. I think it's just sort of hardwired, but I could be wrong, but I think I'm not wrong. So you can use Aftertouch, though, although the Aftertouch on this one's kind of busted. Georgie Pendleton asks, I think the SQ-80 had annoying clacky keys. Is that true? And the answer is absolutely. Actually, both of these have probably the least desirable key beds out of any vintage synth. Now, I could caveat that by saying that, you know, back in the day, key beds were really important for synths. And the sort of mid-80s was where price became king. People were trying to compete. And so both of these key beds are not like anybody's favorite. However, they're still not terrible. They're just clacky for sure. Is it parameter 61 and 62? Let me go look at that. Yeah, so those are different parameters on the DSS-1 as opposed to the DW-8000, unfortunately. I don't think there's a way to defeat the joystick stuff on the DW-8000 like you can on the thing, because parameters 61 and 62 are waveform and frequency for the modulation generator. So anyways, why don't we take it all the way up resonance? So just watch your ears, right? Wrong keyboard. Over here. So this is interesting. You actually can't push it into as much resonance as the DW-8000. So this is close, right? Similar levels, and that's with the resonance maxed out on the SQ-80, but we are about 80% resonance on the DW-8000. So without a doubt, if you need that fully self-oscillating filter, DW-8000 is going to be the way. This really isn't really full self-oscillation on the SQ-80, which I'm actually surprised by. Yeah, I wouldn't say that that's full self-oscillation. That's more in the usable area there. What is it? 66 and 67. Okay, let me check it out. I don't want to spend too much time on this. Oh, you're right. Okay, so let's see what that would be. So if I go to parameter 66. Oh wait, I was on the wrong thing. Where was I? Okay, this is how it all falls apart. So I'm going to just go retransmit one of these guys and bring the, what is it? The glide amount down. Here we go. Well, anyways, you guys got the idea there. Yeah, I love, my tinnitus loves it as well. So yeah, the DW-8000's filter, I would say overall, can push into that territory a little more. But what I'm surprised by is that, you know, in this range, it is much more, you know, just polite. I mean, the SQ-80 sort of sounds like you're running it through a distortion pedal or something. By the way, can I get some scum cheers in the chat? I'm going to drink this Elvis. Let's get this party started. Okay, so the next thing, now that we've sort of covered the filter, I mean, the filter just sounds so good. It's just really ripping on the SQ-80, and then the DW-8000 is much more just polite, right? It's just got a lot more headroom, and so that resonant peak really stands out. So I think that's going to be a theme, because when I was checking out making that intro patch, I noticed this. It was just hard to get the DW-8000 to sound quite as pushed, quite as distorted, quite as whatever. Whereas the SQ-80, kind of the opposite problem, where it sounds ballsy all the time, but maybe to the detriment. Sometimes you want it to sound really clean. And I think the DW sounds a little glassier, a little bit more. It could probably do beautiful a little bit better. Pliskin says it's a draw so far. I agree. We're pretty close here. Yeah, so it's a thing here. So now that we've covered that, why don't we open up the filter again and add a little release. We can do the same thing by going to envelope 4 here and then going to, what is it? Time 4, will that do it? Trying to get those voices to stop ringing out. And of course, I need to go back to the filter, turn the resonance down and the filter all the way up. SQ-80 sounds fucking dope. So what we're going to do is now, instead of modulating the filter, we're going to double modulate, or at least modulate it with the, so we'll bring this down so it's a little darker. Nice and dark. We'll add some resonance to it. I don't know. We're going to increase keyboard tracking as well. I'm going to set it to about 50% in this case, because I just think it's interesting to see the difference in key tracking and see how that goes. So what I'm going to try to do is try to match the filter sound between these two to get some sort of nice big analog pad sound. So we're going to increase the key tracking amount here. We need to increase release on the filter as well. Okay, going to the filter. So it's actually very easy to program the SQ-80. I used to have a custom programmer like I do for the DW-8000 from Synthsarc, and it's awesome. But truthfully, I enjoyed programming it from the front panel so much that I sold the programmer. So that should tell you how great this panel is. A lot of people fear this type of editing, and at first it is intimidating. But so we just go into the filter, you just press the button and then pick whatever you want to modulate it with. In this case, I'll modulate it with envelope 1. Go over to envelope 1 and see what we've got. And it is a 4-stage envelope. I believe if we set time 1 to 0, it sort of becomes like a, down level. What is level 1? Let's bring that down. So now we can bring that down and bring some attack and decay in. I'll bring some volume in here. Actually, I guess we're just bringing this all the way up here, so the decay to sustain doesn't really matter. Let's bring all that up here. Hearing more of that release there. Let's bring that value down a little, so level 4 should be and then time, what is this level? It's this one? I guess we just fucking increase the release here. We're getting close there. Slow the attack down even further. I mean, right there, they're sounding very similar, aren't they? Yeah. I think I agree with you guys about the Mirage. I would love to be able to say I'm going to put the time in. At this point, I'd actually say those sounds are essentially matched. I mean, you could pick out little differences, but that probably has more to do with how I programmed it than anything. We've only been listening to one oscillator, though. So why don't we bring in the next oscillator, right? So we got to go to the DCA and bring that in. Oscillator 2 is a sawtooth waveform, but we need to add some detune here. Same idea over here on the DW-8000. Let's bring in oscillator 2. But without any detune, it's going to sound weird, especially on these hybrids because they have very good tuning. So it's pretty much even able to match the detune characteristic, which I think is pretty cool. I think with, okay, so what are we hearing here? Because I'm hearing some differences. Right? I mean, Nacho, welcome to the stream. Chinos, welcome to the stream. Now, we do have something that we can do on the SQ-80 that we can't on the DW-8000, which is we can actually bring in another fucking oscillator and then, you know, tune this up even a little further. So now we have 3 oscillators per voice. So things are starting to sound pretty super saw-like, and we don't have that here. Do is we can actually kick on some digital chorus. Westbeth Kid coming in hot. So, I mean, we can get kind of in the neighborhood, but there we really start to have a difference where we have 3 DCAs, and one of the biggest things is because we have 4 envelopes on the SQ-80, you can control each of those amplifiers separately for each oscillator and create little 3-stage wave sequences even, all sorts of stuff. So, you know, we have the raw material to create something. Let's go ahead and create more of like a little Pluck So jumping back to envelope 1, because that's what we're using for the filter here. Let's go ahead and bring the time 1. Let's bring level 1 all the way up and level 2 all the way down. And then we'll go to the filter. Let's turn the resonance down a bit. And let's increase the time a bit. What's interesting is the way that the release character on the SQ-80 works, where let's just bring that down to 0 here, because we can go negative actually, which is kind of crazy to think about. And then just bring the frequency down. There we go. That'll probably give us a more natural type of sound going back over to the decay. Westpath Kid, the SQ-80 has 4 envelopes and 3 oscillators. Is this the first time the Plucks have entered this chat? I have a tendency not to do Plucks that much, just because to me they're a little bit... Pluck. DW-8000's just... Just want you to know that massive super saw of sound is just 2 fucking DW-8000 oscillators. The chorus is fucking off. That is just the fucking... Chinos. I fucking hate how great this $650 synthesizer costs. I want you to just think about the Behringer Pro 800 for a second. And I know you guys are probably tired of me talking shit about Behringer here, but you know, everybody's like, there's no synthesizer you can buy that's as powerful as the Behringer Pro 800 for, you know, and they have a point, right? $400 is an incredible price point for a synthesizer that may or may not work. But the biggest thing about it, that to me, is that, you know, people factor out the cost of a key bed when they're talking about synths often, and I'm guilty of it too, even in my videos. The thing is, if you want to buy a good 61 key bed with a velocity and aftertouch, you're going to spend about $250 anyways. So why wouldn't you want something that sounds way fucking better? You can get one of these for $652. They're both incredible. So I'm kind of actually in this weird, I don't know which I'd prefer, and I want to know what you guys think. Which would you prefer? Because sounds so good. Obviously the SQ-80 is more like mid-rangey, whereas the DW-8000 is just like pristine across the frequency spectrum. Really nice attack on this too. Let me just check envelope 1. Yeah, should be good. Filter get all the way there, so I'm going to double modulate the filter with envelope 1 and bring the frequency down a bit. Teosophy, that's interesting that you had the ESQ twice, but just wasn't a big fan of it. TS10's amazing, so I get that. And they are different sounds for sure. Dubstation was saying that the ESQ1 has a slightly darker sound. They do have different filters. They're very similar to the SQ80s, but they are not exactly the same. Yeah, so the Sega Genesis uses that 4-op chip, and what's cool is that Isla Instruments Caladan is going to have that chip built into it, which is going to be there. So absolutely super cool. And Torben, yeah, playing them at the same time is just something. Yeah, of course, they both have problems, but Westbeth Kid, but overall, I think the build quality on both is pretty phenomenal. So let's go ahead now and take a second. We'll drop down to a single oscillator again. So we'll leave the release and the slow decay of the filter just so that we have a beautiful sound while we're listening to the different waveforms. So we have a lot of different waveforms when it comes to the SQ-80, and we have 16 on the DW-8000. Now, I want to know what you guys think, but the interesting thing, let's see, Vincent, I don't believe so. If you look it up, I believe they have slightly different Curtis chip filters, actually. You guys someone can look on Rosen Sound's website where they have a nice list of all the different Curtis chips and SSM chips that were used in synths. I could be wrong, though. It's always possible. So if someone would look that up for me real quick, that would actually be wonderful. So when it comes to the modern musician, as opposed to 7 when this bad boy came out, 87, 88, I think, the thing is that back then, the ability to have, like, for instance, drums and everything in one keyboard was a huge step forward. A lot of people say the SQ-80 started the workstation revolution ahead of the Korg M1. And that's sort of true because you could sequence out an entire song on an SQ-80 just like with an M1, as opposed to something like the DW-8000, which is still very much a pure synth, right? Are they both 3379s? Yeah, Korg is definitely an NJM. I want to say it's a 2069 chip. I could be wrong with a couple of the numbers there. But anyways, the waveforms, I guess what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to waveforms, that there's an argument to be made that you might want less waveforms on a hybrid, like quality over quantity might be a thing, because the fact of the matter is that if they use the memory up to get a bunch of waves on the SQ-80, but they don't sound quite as good, it's like nowadays we have so many options that we don't need quite as much quantity. We want more quality. So we're going to go through all the different waves and just try to do the thing. So we already did the bells. We have sine waves, which I believe a sine wave is, what is it? Yeah. So we can compare the sine waves here. So DW-8000 first. Really clean with a little digital noise. A lot more distortion on the SQ-80. Both sound good, but again, the DW... the analog amplifiers on the DW-8000, you can hear them click as they open very subtly, which is already giving this sort of sine wave pad sound. Little convincing, which I'm just not getting that same thing on the SQ-80. Again, these are little nitpicks. I don't think it's at this point worth buying one over the other. So we compared the square waves. We have pulse waves. Wow, that's narrow. Really narrow. Do we have an equivalent wave over here? Not even close. We have a really narrow pulse here. We've got noise. What's interesting about the noise sources, I think we do have something that's closer to like white noise, but you can hear they're much more like the spectral waves in the D50. And that's why, for me, even though the SQ-80 is a hybrid synth, to me, it really is probably better to compare this against the D50 overall, because it does have that sort of sound in these noise waveforms. We don't have anything like this on the DW, by the way. It's got to be some sort of cross modulation type thing. And then... It's like there's noise on the DW-8000, I'm sure of that. So we have just really... We have some noise on the DW. I can't remember if it's digital or analog noise, but it sounds very good. Yeah, it's the NJM 2069 chip. Yeah, so you can split and layer like Dubstation is saying, and this is the best trick. So I'm going to just read the comment out. I love copying a patch and hard pan them and change the filter mod slightly for the stereo so that you get that like binaural effect a la Oberheim OBX8 version 2.0, right? So the noise on the DW Really great. So let's continue on. We got noise 3. And these are much more like the types of spectral waves you have in the D50. We've got bass. We do have these different kinds of waveforms. We have a piano-based waveform. I mean, immediately I can't help but just think the DW is really crushing in this territory. E-piano sounds. Now, we get into some stuff that the DW just simply does not have again, which is like this voice. Some really kind of PPG Wave just a really beautiful sound, isn't it? Really great. Dubstation says that the NJM 2069 chip in the DSS-1, Poly 800, and of course the DW-8000 is designed to sound like an SSM. In my opinion, it sounds freaking amazing. I think it sounds better than the SSM chip in the Poly 6. Different voice, you know. We really don't have anything that's going to sound like that in the DW. We've got a kick drum. Reed. We got some organ type sounds. Can I get some scum organs? I think I got rid of that emoji. We just have these really thick sounding, I think this is like the saxophone waveform. Really not comparable. We have organs. Right, let's go ahead and... I do think the organs beats it out on the SQ-80. We've got different synth waveforms. So that's definitely like an additive sounding waveform, which would be cool to do some sort of additive pad with that. And I mean, that's where the SQ-80 starts to just take off, where we really can't compare it. It almost is starting to feel like, to me, when it comes to the oscillator section, the DW-8000 almost does it better every time. It just sounds really, really good. But the SQ-80 can do some stuff that the DW couldn't dream of. And when it comes to the filters, I think the filter on the DW-8000 sounds really clean, which is fine. Especially with low resonance, it's just incredibly huge sounding. With higher resonance, I like the squelchy, distorted, Oberheimy, growly type character of the SQ-80, and you can't really get it to growl quite as much. I agree, Torben. So just moving right along. So again, we have these formant waves that just sound gorgeous. You know, really thin though. So I definitely think you need to involve that filter to be able to give it some, you know, grit, some warmth. But of course you're supposed to layer these too, right? Pulse 2? So this pulse wave is much more usable. Square 2? Oh. Whoa, that's really cool. It's almost like a filtered sort of wave. But it doesn't sound quite like a triangle either, does it? Right? Super cool. 4 octaves. So that definitely has more of that 4 octaves. We got prime numbers now, so again, we can get into some kind of more additive territory. Yeah, none of the vintage Oberheim OBs had state variable filters. Let me just clear that up real quick. OBX, OBXA, and OB8 did not. The Matrix 12 and Expander did. And then the previous generation, which was essentially just the SEMs, Oberheim SEMs, had state variable filters that you could actually blend between. And then you have the Oberheim 2, 4, and 8 voice, which is essentially just stacking a bunch of SEMs together to get more voices. So again, looking, you know, we compared the bell tones earlier, and the DW-8000 had a really great bell. But we have a lot of different tones and timbres here. This is bass 2, sort of like an FME type thing. Really dark piano. If you're asking me if I would prefer an OBX8 or an OB6, I would prefer a Matrix 6. Octaves. So here's where, you know, I could definitely see getting into some cool territory. And there isn't really equivalent waveforms on the DW-8000. All sound much more similar to each other. You know, they're a little formanty, but it's not yes, and then I agree with Dubstation TO5. Triangle wave, which of course we don't have on the DW-8000. And here, the noise, digital noise, sounds so beautiful. Really great read 2. Really thin read 3. A little bit more. We've got grit. I want you to think about this too. We're just listening to these individual waveforms, but these are really ingredients, right? These are seasonings. So and because you have 3 oscillators, you could have like a really big detuned sawtooth thing and then layer in some grit. In fact, I think I'm going to do that at some point, but I want to just go through all the waves. We've got these wonderful E-piano glints. Wow, those are fucking rippingly high. But what they're good for is being able to add that to the front end, because again, you can modulate each one of these amplifiers separately. Clav brass. We do have a brass waveform. It's thinner on the SQ-80. We got like a violin type thing, digital. More PPG Wave-ish. That bell is really good. Alien. Alien choir breath. So here's another thing. You don't even get a waveform like this on the D50. I love a good breath. Just so beautiful. I love a good slurred word. How's this voice? So here's the thing. I almost immediately have this sense of like, it doesn't even matter anymore what the comparison is between the DW and the SQ-80. I have to have an SQ-80. I can't give up these waveforms. And I don't have a microwave. I don't have a Prophet VS. I don't have a Waldorf Wave or a PPG Wave. But aside from that, I basically have had all of the hybrids from the vintage hybrids. And SQ-80 is going to be kind of your last stop where you can get analog filters that also has this waveform in it. Can any of the people in the chat with ESQ1s confirm whether or not this is in here? Like, do you have the voice and breath waveforms in an ESQ1? It's called Steam Metal. Very nice. Very, you can make Fantasia type sounds out of it. Chime. Bowing. So, and here's the other thing. We also have, finally, we've reached some of the attack waveforms that you don't have at all, anything close to that in the DW-8000. The only real thing for me that's a question mark is, does the SQ-80 do the sample plus synthesis thing as well as the D50? Now, in theory, it should be able to, because you can actually run the samples through the filter, and you've got analog filters. But having said that, the D50 is kind of like perfect. So this is how you can get some really cool bass tones, right? With this pick sound. Then we got an electric guitar pick, which is super cool. Mallet attacks. A slap sample for slap bass stuff. One's called Pluck. The amount of aliasing. So good. Plunk. Oi. Let's drop the octave down. I love that. Yeah, it's just an awesome sound. Click. But very, controlled in the upper range. Chiff for, flute sounds. Thump. Again, I just love these low ones. Drum. Kick drums. Snare drum. Man, it sounds awesome down here. It's like dropping a bomb on here. Oh my gosh. Sounds so good. Hi-hat. Now, but here's the thing. I mean, and then you have like this last one is couple of different drum setups so that you can do all sorts of stuff. So those are all the different waveforms here. Let's just go through and make sure I covered all the waves on the DW-8000. So we have like a much more like calmy piano type of thing. Do some real wave sequencing. Some really beautiful waves. I would say overall, I'd say almost every time. The brass waveform, and it's really good for like analog, like a little bit thinner of a sawtooth sound that's more mid-rangey for Oberheim-y type. Yeah, just really great. You get this sort of thing with the DW-8000 where it's just like every waveform sounds good, and you almost don't need the filter. It just sounds so wonderful. SQ-80, the waveforms for me are mostly not as good as the DW-8000. Sawtooth square waves sound fine, but the DW-8000's got a sort of a classiness. Sort of like, on the other hand, though, they really are just like variations on square and sawtooth waves. It's like a very buzzy, bacon sizzle top end, and then not so much mids. It's just like scooped. Now, I know they said they derived these from actual additive resampling of instruments. Comparing the Quai K3, which can do a really good piano sound, the SQ-80 and ESQ-1 can do pretty good piano sounds. DW-8000 does not have like a good piano sound in it because these waveforms just don't sound like actual samples at all. Although they do sound great. So we got a couple of different ways we could go about this. So let's bring in some other oscillators here. Let's take this into a sine wave, and let's go to oscillator 3 and bring in square 2, I think I really liked. Just go find square 2. And just bring the volume down. Increase the time. And hot too. So I'm going to just, again, I don't think we can really get rid of the hotness. I think we're just sort of stuck with the hotness, but let's chain oscillator 2 off of sine wave. It's probably just too beefy, and pick something else. Let's go with like one of those weird noise oscillators. That might be a little too weird, but a little of it's kind of cool. Let's go find, what was some other ones in here? Let's go with, there was a Formant one, right? Oh dear. Where's some of those Formants? Yeah, here we go. Oh, I need to, let's see, bring that. Oh, increase the time here. Bring that down. Bring the volume up a little. Let's just bring that back to, what do we want? Voice 2. Let's bring this up an octave. Bring it up another octave. We can bring the volume on that kind of down a little bit. Some resonance to the filter. Quite so much. Try to set these to similar times. Change out this oscillator again. Let's bring the volume up so I can hear it, or we can just turn the volume off on the other two and turn this one. Whoa, I didn't mean to turn it up that high. Let's change this one out for something weird. Maybe we'll go back to noise. I actually kind of think I like the noise in there. It was kind of just weird, right? Where the fuck was the noise at? Where the fuck was that noise? Yeah, that's cool. And then we just turn these oscillators back on. Almost. Haven't even touched on one of the biggest things is this filter. So I've got envelope 1 modulating the filter. I'm going to set this to, let's go to, what is it? Pressure, right? So you guys should all know about this, but if you don't. We do have polyphonic aftertouch. We have polyphonic aftertouch on this key bed, right? In fact, we don't even need that much of it, it seems like. just pretty crazy. Also, I do have, just saw you guys talking about the USB drives and stuff. I have this really cool memory cartridge that lets you have like 16 banks of different sounds that you can create. So I've never really needed to have, you know, I don't use the floppy drive at all. In fact, I don't even know if mine works. I've never even tried it. But that's a really great option. I think they're about $100 or so. But of course, if you want to load a lot of patches on, you can also get one of those GoTech drives and do that sort of thing too. Let's go in a different direction with this. Let's turn the release off. And let's see here. Level. Let's bring that. Let's just set these to 0. And we should be able to remove. Sounds, right? Well, one thing I'm noticing about it is comparing it to the DW-8000. Well, that's actually not going to work very well. About the DW-8000 ever sounds like low fidelity, whereas we are getting more of that like low fidelity type thing. Sort of a sound to it. Let's decrease. All right. Okay, what we'll do is go into all of these and turn them off and pick some new waveforms. Let's go back to Grit. Grit 1 sounds really good. Grit 1 and Grit 2 are pretty much interchangeable. So we'll turn Oscillator 1 off, Oscillator 2 on, and pick another waveform. Oh, noise actually sounds like noise down there. Replaceable anyways. Let's go ahead and bring in 2 sawtooth waves, right? Or we could do a saw and a square. I don't know. What do you guys think? I didn't mean to write. Can I get out of here? Let's just exit out of that. Yep. Let's do saw and a square wave, I suppose. Turning the resonance down on the filter. So I'm using a very small amount of resonance, but what a difference it makes for this type of Reese type sound. I'm controlling that with aftertouch, polyphonic aftertouch. And after fucking 35 years or so, right? How long has it been? 88? Yeah, 30. What are we coming up on? Yeah, 35 years? The polyphonic aftertouch just feels amazing. Let's go ahead and do the Reese test over here on the DW. So we'll just pick 2 sawtooth waves. And here, just so much more distortion, but on the other hand, the DW, it's just got that fucking. Just like to demonstrate that the poly aftertouch is incredibly. I have thought about doing the JD-800 versus a bunch of synths, probably SY-99, TS-10, D-50, of course. Even the SQ-80 could potentially be there. I think the thing about the DW-8000 that I'm coming to this stream is that it just is pretty much perfect for what it's trying to do. I think, if anything, it's just doesn't have the range quite that the SQ-80 does, but having said that, though, I think the SQ-80 definitely has, like, for the Reese, I like how the filter just breaks up. It just has that distortion. But the DW-8000 is one of the best sounding synthesizers. Like, my camera right now is sitting on a synthesizer. They're going for like around $12,000, right? DW-8000, $650. To my ear, I'd be kind of happy with either of them. And that hurts to say because I paid a lot of money for that synth. But the truth is that the DW-8000 just, like, what are we missing here? On what do they call this? Motorized slider. There's the word. The thing is when you use the resonance on the DW-8000, it's got a little bit, ironically, of what a lot of people think of like Curtis chip thing where the resonance really pokes out. It's very clean and sharp and clinical, and I think it sounds beautiful, but it is that way. I do like how the SQ-80's resonance is more distorted, more saturated, more integrated into the signal. But I have to say, you know, and this is why, for me, why I got a TS10, is the SQ-80 has the analog filters, but it doesn't have the fidelity in the samples really to get you 100% of the way there. Honestly, it sounds closer to like the Quai K3 in terms of it. The DW-8000 is just kind of in its own fucking league as far as vintage hybrids, in my opinion. They're both incredible though, and I don't think I could ever really get rid of one over the other. I think they're both just phenomenal. Yeah, they're just incredible synthesizers. But what do you guys think? I don't know. Yes, my camera is sitting on a $12,000 synth. Yeah. Westbeth Kids, there's just something about the DW that just works. Yeah. Which one is easier to program? If you don't have a programmer, the SQ-80 is absolutely easier to program than the DW-8000. And I would just like to say too, and whenever we do these comparisons, the synthesizer that is often simpler is the one that will tend to win in these versus streams because there's less things to get right. And so we've got 3 oscillators, we have 4 amplifiers, 3 LFOs, and 4 envelopes, plus splits and layers on the SQ-80. DW-8000, we have 2 envelopes, 1 LFO, and that's it. Like 2 oscillators. So it's like, it's a lot simpler, and there's a lot more that can go on. Like looking at the LFO here, we have like all sorts of different things, all sorts of different waves we can pick out. We can do, I believe, like sample and hold. So if we modulate the filter with instead of aftertouch, or we could modulate it with the LFO here. And then LFO 1, let's just increase that amount. Oh, sorry, where are we at? So it's a lot easier, like your whole mod matrix happens here, and it's so easy to program. And then we can just turn the rate up. And then change the wave to... doing something wrong here. There we go. There we go. Now let's see the different waveforms. So interestingly, we do have noise here. Would have been more interesting to have sample and hold, right? Really interesting sound. Chino says that's about a VX600. No, I'd love to get my hands on one of those. Pretty much the cheapest VCO, 2 VCO per voice plus velocity and aftertouch synth there is, I believe. Yes, you can do sync, which is how you can do fake PWM with square waves. You can do the same thing on the JX3P, but because you have more oscillators, it's a lot easier to get away with that type of thing on the SQ-80, which is super cool. Yeah. And let's see, Dubstation says, I've owned all the big and little bros of these and kept the DW-8000 over a DSS-1 and DW-6000 and kept the ESQ-1 over SQ-80. Side note, kept an SD-1 over the TS-12. Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. Like, there's all of these synths and which is the best. I think the DW-6000, I'd love to get my hands on one just because you've got that analog chorus. And I'm a slut for an analog chorus. I think a lot of us are. DeCarmick asks, how does the JD800 compare to all of these? The JD800 is very different. So it's going to be very bright. It's got the fidelity. It's a different type of beast. I really couldn't say it compares in any way. And I'm known for doing some pretty out there comparisons where I'll compare two synths that I'll get the comments all the time of people being like, you can't compare those two synths. They're just too different. But to me, you know, sometimes you can, and sometimes you do get something interesting out of two synths, a comparison between the two that you wouldn't necessarily think. Anyways, guys, I think that's a good enough place. It's sort of a weird place, but a good enough place to call the demonstration for tonight, or to sort of shootout part of the stream. Now I would like to ask you guys, and the beautiful thing is these synths effectively are the same price right now, coincidentally. SQ-80s, I think, will have a tendency to go back up in price. But the question would be, which would you buy? And you can get both of these guys for $650. Now, technically, you could get the SQ-80 for cheaper from Dubstation Zero because you're watching the stream right now. So I'm going to put the poll in the chat here. And let's just see what people have to say. I'd be very curious to see what the what's going on in the poll. So here. So the retroactive programmer lets you save patches to the programmer, so I don't have any need for memory. But the DW-8000 has this really weird big ass memory box that you have to get. Let me catch up with the chat here too. Let's see here. Slava Ukraini. Yeah. The DW-6000, does it have a sawtooth wave? Holy shit. That would, yeah, that might change my opinion of it a little bit. Talk about an oversight. Although I can understand, I can respect its purity, right? It's like, Korg was like, dude, we're going to make a motherfucking hybrid synth. You don't need no sawtooth wave. Go buy a Poly, what was it? The Poly 61. If you want a goddamn sawtooth wave. This is a hybrid synth. And then I think they pretty quickly figured out we should have put a sawtooth wave in it. Yes, the DSS-1, I've got it right here. And it is fucking heavy. Well, Westbeth Kid, I would want you to vote on whether or not it's which you'd prefer to have, even if DW-8000. Maybe I should have stated, like, if you had to have only one, what would it be? Yeah. So, yeah. Gerald says the SQ-80 is a programmer's dream. It offers almost everything. Westbeth Kid says $650 is a bit much for the DW-8000. I think it's awesome you got yours for $200. I do not think $650 is too much. Like, what other synth are you going to get nowadays that sounds that good? What other vintage synth are you going to get nowadays that sounds that good? I don't think any. I think it's like, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Alpha Juno 2 as well. You can get those for around that price. But, by the way, the bass line in this song is the DW-8000. Just so you guys know. Dubstation says, talking patch memory, DW-8000 does great with SysX patch banks, whereas an SQ-80 can't really do SysX banks. That's a good thing. Poly Aftertouch, huge advantage on the SQ-80 for sure. Yeah. Georgie says, I'm Ensoniq bias, so I'd like the SQ-80, even though I think the SQ-80L satisfactory already. SQ-80V by Arturia is very good too. Westbeth says only one. DW. DeCarmick asks, do you have a Discord or other discussion forum? No, I've gotten asked that question before. Aquatic has encouraged me to get one going. The best way, well, I don't really know if it's a great way. See, that's the problem with YouTube as it stands. I think soon YouTube's membership will be as good as like a Discord, but it's not there yet. So right now I do post certain things in the members only section. So I will post occasionally a members only video. I'm going to be doing members only live streams, doing a remix for Angel Spit coming up. I'm going to be getting that going in the next couple of weeks or so. I have a new EP I need to master, or it might be a mix and master. I'd have to look at the notes on it. So that's something that's got to get done. I'm editing a huge video for the channel right now. It's going to be over an hour. Pliskin says, yeah, early 2000s were a great time, but those prices are long gone. Sari, $350 for a DSS-1 is incredible, but it is huge. Midiox used to make my SQ-80 act up when you touch the keys. Yeah, I've seen some. So that whenever I talk prices, I don't talk about local pickup or anything like that. And I always make sure that when I'm talking about them, that they are in great condition, regardless of what it says on Reverb. So people will list a synth and it'll say excellent condition, and they'll say something like, yeah, excellent condition, only 3 of the keys don't work. And to me, that's not like, I need everything on the synth to work if I'm going to recommend it. So yeah, Discord does allow for a lot more interaction, so for sure. Zozilla asked, are we going to have any desktop modules coming up? Well, unfortunately, my friend, I'm sort of wed to big muscle car synthesizers. I would love to get some desktop module stuff in here, but, you know, I'm not like sponsored by anybody, you know. I'm so jealous of like Bad Gear. Whenever I watch one of his videos and he's like, thank you for Klangfarbe for sending this over to me, I'm always like, damn it, I need to find, and I've looked, like there are no independent music stores that carry synths in my, not just my county, but my whole region. Like it's just, there aren't any that I'm aware of. So I would love to be able to borrow some stuff. I've thought about just like buying a Behringer UBXA on Amazon and returning it if I, you know, don't like it. I know it'd be better for the channel if I reviewed modern synths and shit as it was coming out and stuff people want to know about, because I think a lot of people are afraid to buy vintage synths, or they just want all of the functionality of the new stuff, which I can't blame them on that part. But, you know, hopefully there's something to be said for the authenticity of like, I do videos on synths that I'm interested in, and I'm interested in vintage stuff because there's an integrity to it. There's a connection to history. That bass right there is the Moog source. It's a very cool sound. Yeah. Perfect Circuit. Yeah, I would love to have some sort of that. Yeah. Perfect Circuit. I mean, I would love that, Turan, but I just don't know that they would send anything to me. I'm over here on the East Coast too, so the shipping's pretty serious. Yeah. China says you should get a third wave and sample the SQ-80. That would be interesting. Yeah. Dubstation says the SQ-80 is ugly, but fully functional. And I love a good ugly synth. My Poly 6 has been through hell, and I think it makes it look better. Yeah, Portland. Yeah. Let's see. No, I mean, it's not, it's just you know, just because he's in Austria doesn't mean it's easier. It's just that there happens to be a store near him. Yeah. Desktop sensor for Scobs, 19-inch rack is for Scum. Yeah, I do have some 19-inch rack stuff that I'm recommending in my upcoming video. But there are a couple of like, what is it, the TG-77, right? That's an SY-77, but kind of in desktop format. It seems like right at the end of the 80s, they were starting to get into that sort of thing. Zozilla says, giving your taste and knowledge, reviewing new synths will be taken more seriously compared to other YouTube channels. I do hope that. And, you know, at some point, hopefully someone out there will send me some new gear to review, like not even to keep, but just to check out. But, yeah, but currently it's not an option currently. Alamo Music in Texas, yeah. But I mean, they seem to have their own guys. What was his name? Zach Marr. Has anybody heard from Zach Marr? I'm worried about him. I haven't heard from him in a while. He's kind of like their guys. He's like their YouTube guy, and he hasn't really put out a video in over a year, I feel like. Yeah. Chino says the third wave has PPG waveforms, the cheapest than the original PPG wave, and can sound close. Waldorf's M has the microwave waveforms in it, which are the PPG waveforms, and those are cheaper than a third wave. So you can get the desktop Waldorf M. Has analog filters too. I think you can get an Iridium for even cheaper than that, and that should have those waves in it too. Working your way down from there, you can actually get, there are absolutely emulations of that are even cheaper. Does the ESQ one have poly aftertouch? I thought it didn't. Yeah. Tell Espen Croft you'll trade your Alpha Juno for something. He's never getting rid of his. I love that video. Would you go for a third wave over a peak? That one's tough to karmic. They're a little bit different beasts. I think the third wave's awesome, and I think the peak is awesome. But I haven't played either. TG33, that's probably what it was. Do I know Chris Nicholson? KMK Vault? No, I'm not familiar. So yeah. Adapt, manipulate. I didn't say hi to you earlier. How are you doing? Yeah. Waldorf M just added samples. That's pretty good. No poly aftertouch on the SQ1. Yeah, that's what I thought. I didn't think the SQ1 had poly aftertouch. So I think that like one feature is probably worth it. Third wave is very expensive. People love it though. Yeah, I don't know. So my upcoming video is talking about vintage synths, like basically a review of the market. And I think I counted something like 50 synthesizers on the list. Now I'm going to probably edit a few out, but 50 synthesizers that I would recommend that are vintage in great condition. So you don't have to worry about them, you know, having problems, right? Other than like if they get damaged in shipping, but that's true for any synth, right? Under $2,000. And just like think about that, like how much people are spending. Think about Moog Muse being listed, you know, the price leaked $4,300, and people have the gall to say that that's competitively priced. It's crazy to me. Yeah. So Waldorf M has analog filters, I believe. Iridium has digital filters. Yeah. Yeah, no worries, Adapt. Sorry, it's just interesting I'm catching up with the chat. It's interesting, the discussion here right now. SQ-80s usually go for at least $1,000, $1,100, something like that. Yeah. No, please look it up, digital. Well, okay, you've made me actually go look it up. So why don't we just look it up here? Let's see. Let's just go to Waldorf's website. You've convinced me. I don't want to be spreading lo-fi Matt. I don't want to be spreading misinformation. So, wow, Waldorf's site is fucking slow. Let's just go to Sound on Sound. It's much faster. Yeah. Yep, analog filter. Oh, wait. Let me make sure I'm getting this right. Yeah. Let me just double fucking check this. Let's go ahead and just look at Perfect Circuit. Yep, it's analog filters lo-fi, Matt. I was correct. Not trying to rub it in your face. but it was analog filters in the Waldorf M, just so you know. M is analog, Iridium's digital, Quantum is analog, but basically the exact same things. Yeah. No, but see, here's the thing, Chinos. You can get so many incredible analog synths from the 80s for, like, you can buy a Prophet 600 right now for $1,250 with shipping. So essentially the same price as an Oberon UBXA. Now, it doesn't have polyphonic aftertouch, but the key bed works. And you're not going to have the problems, you know, that people are having with it. You might have certain problems with it, hopefully get the gleekly modded ones and stuff like that. But just to me, the idea that vintage analog synths are like way too expensive. Matrix 6 is another great one. And if you just want the sounds, you can get a rack mount Matrix 1000 for like less than $800. Yeah. DeKarmic asks, would you upgrade from a Peak to a Summit? I mean, I think that just comes down to like, do you like playing keys? In which case, it's probably worth it to get the Summit. If you're not planning on playing the keys, I would just stick with the Peak. Yeah. Yes, I would love to get my hands on a GSS or a GS1 or a GS2. But yeah. So anyways, let me go look at the poll here. Let's end the poll. And you guys voted 80% of you said you'd prefer the SQ-80 over the DW-8000, which is pretty shocking to me. Lo-Fi Matt, I'm gonna have to ask you just to look it up because I don't know off the top of my head what the price of a Waldorf M is going for. I think like $2,000, but I have no fucking clue, to be honest. I apologize. So when you just consider that, I mean, you can get a vintage microwave for about $1,500. So it's the analog filters with the PPG wavetables from 1989, which is super cool. Yeah. So Torben says 2,600. Zazilla says 1,599. Yeah, Waldorf makes expensive stuff. I think Iridium is like, that's their price point. I put the Waldorf Quantum Mark II as my most overpriced synth of the year this year because I just thought it was way, way too much. 1,500, yes, that's, you know, that is what it is. I don't know if I want to say that's good, but it's not terrible. So this is one of those times where I disagree with the chat, where I personally, if I had to stick with one and I had to sell the other one, I think I would go and keep the DW-8000. Like, to me, that thing just, especially when we were checking out the Plucks, that raw oscillator tone and the filter just sounded magical. So I'm quite surprised by that. Yeah. Deadman Walking says he's waiting for Uli's wave. Yeah. Yeah, 1550. Yeah. About to get a Kyra. Zozilla asked for the DW-8000. Dubstation is upset. I thought the DW-8000 sounded great. I will say this, though. They both have their own strengths. I think the sawtooth and square waves and sine wave... I mean, honestly, the SQ-80, the oscillator sounded great, but the DW-8000 always sounded incredible in the oscillator section. SQ-80 was a little whatever. It was interesting because the filter on the SQ-80 does this juicy, distorted, wonderful thing when you crank the resonance. But when the resonance is dialed back, which some people would say is like when the filter's not engaged, but that's not necessarily true. The DW-8000's just so beautiful and lush and consistent and balanced across the key bed. I just thought it sounded beautiful, but maybe I'm crazy. Clearly, 80% of you thought the SQ-80 was the better pick. So, yeah. Yeah. Taryn really liked the SQ-80 noise samples. I will say this, the SQ-80 doesn't sound like any other synth. It's got its own sound. I think even compared to the SQ-1, it's going to sound different. It's going to have its own sort of character to it. It is a breeze to program, whereas the DW-8000, you probably want to get something like a programmer to program it. I'm glad I don't have to like punch in the parameter values. But I will say, with something like a retroactive programmer or Novation Mark II, the Dubstation always recommends, then the DW-8000 is slightly easier to program. So, yeah. Taryn Gray says, they're definitely of a time that I feel like I'm always chasing to recreate. And that, right there, my friend, is so important to say. And I don't think anybody has said it as well as you just did, Taryn, which is that everybody in the synth market nowadays is looking for that vintage analog synth magic. And I just listened to a really great demo of TO5 today, and I was just thinking, oh God, it has that magic of a vintage synth, right? So what I recommend on this channel is that people who don't have any vintage synths, something like the DW-8000 or SQ-80, very cheap investment, right? And unlike a modern synth, which is going to depreciate in value, I mean, like, the fucking OBX8s have depreciated by some crazy amount. I mean, you can get them sometimes for like $3,500. That's like fucking 35% depreciation in the first year, something like that. Whereas right now, the synth market is depressed. So this is the perfect time to buy a synthesizer because it's going to go back up. So you're probably going to make money if you buy a DW-8000 or an SQ-80 right now. Yeah. So anyways, I just think that what Taryn said about like chasing that sound, it's like these synths just have it baked in. Yeah, I do think the SQ-80 is going to sit better in a mix, 100%, Nick. I do want the rubber fix kit from Centaur to make mine less clunky. It just seems like it's always sold out. Zilla says, could you in the reviews talk about the ability to integrate into modern workflow setups? I could, but the problem is that I'm not really the guy that can best speak to that because I have not yet plunged into Eurorack. And when it comes to DAWs and stuff, like I'm not modulating a lot of shit via CC because I don't think it always sounds that great. Yeah. Chino says, do you think that Casio CZ101 is bad or not? So right off camera, I have a Casio CZ1 that's broken that I wanted to have. I really want to check it out at some point, but I can't seem to get this one fixed. So, Torvin says, well, it's the synth I'd get rid of the easiest. Yeah. Westbeth Kid says, totally agree. Vintage synths, you turn them on and there's that sound. Very easy. On the other hand, I mean, I noticed like with the SQ-80 tonight and the DW-8000 that often they are sort of, they do one sound really well, but they're not as versatile. Modern synths can do so much and they can sound really good across a wide range of sounds. But I think a lot of the times us synth scum, we really want something that's inspiring, and that's often not going to be able to be everything. It's going to do one thing really well, and I think the SQ-80 and the DW-8000 both really do well at their own thing. Westbeth Kid, I definitely was never interested in Eurorack until I went to KnobCon and I saw some of the performances and I realized, nope, that is actually the shit. Like there were some really musical performances there. Dubstation Zero is a modular artist that's really impressive. It's able to be, I really do think Eurorack is phenomenal. So I've changed my mind about it. Chino says, I started with analog, but I've moved to digital because I want more control over the sound. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes too many options is bad. Eurorack is kind of like the ultimate too many options, but that's kind of what's good about it, you know. I went to 2023. Haven't decided if I'm going this year or not. Lo-Fi Mass asks if I like Heinbach. Yes, I do. So on that note, I think that's probably a good place for us to call it for tonight. Really fun stream. The Versus streams, I do for me, honestly. I do them personally, and I do it for you guys. They don't do as well on YouTube. Like, the algorithm does not like versus streams. Algorithm wants me to just cover one synth, right? Because it's like, when people search, they search for like Alpha Juno. The only time the algorithm kind of is okay with it is when it's like Talfa came out, like a VST recreation, and it's that versus the original hardware. But that's kind of rare, and even then it didn't do that much better than my average video. So they, you know, when I do these streams, it's more for us to really, because it makes a big difference when you're listening to a synth demo on its own. It's very easy to lose context and to have it skew. So, you know, the certain synths in the past, I've been like, oh, that synth sounds really good. But by the time I get into the studio and I play it against the other synths, I'm like, it kind of sounds a little thin, right? So that's why you sort of need to have, you know, these comparison streams. For me anyways, I think it's very valuable. It's for the true scum out there. You get a lot out of hearing the little nuanced differences between two synthesizers that you're just never going to hear when you're only listening to a synth on its own. Almost all of these synths sound really good on their own. So, yeah. So, Casio versus Jupiter 8. I've done some crazy streams. That would be something. SQ-80 kind of reminds me of the Akai AX80. Yeah, there's probably some overlap there. I've never, my friend John from Edgestone Studios, we've been talking about doing a collaborative scum night where we'd shoot out like the SQ-80, the AX80 versus my AX60 at some point, but we'll have to get there. Anyways, guys, I'm Vulture Culture. We've fucking did it again. So I hope you guys have a phenomenal week, and I cannot wait to see you in the next video. Continue to be excellent.